All right. Well, I think we're ready to get started. Really excited to be here with you today. Just so everybody knows, we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So feel free to enter your questions in the chat throughout, and we'll make sure we get to those. And if we don't, we'll definitely be following up. But just a quick welcome again to today's webinar. Excited to be here with you today. We're going to talk about strategies to recession-proof your support operations. Hopefully you find this valuable and informative, and yeah, let's get started. But before we do, we'll do some quick intros. So I'm Tim Dean, Director of Customer Success here at HelpShift. I've been with the company for just about 4 years now. I work mainly with our enterprise customers, ensuring, I understand and working in advisory capacity to just understand their goals, how they run their operations. And as I hear that, I try to layer that in with, okay, here are recommendations, best use of practices of features and functionality to achieve those goals. I've been in customer success for, I'd say, over 10 years, leading teams of CSMs for an automated marketing company, an e-commerce platform, and now with HelpShift. And then prior to that, I was in finance. I survived, the dot-com bust and the 2008 recession, working with really just the C-suite of tracking institutional capital. So I've been working with customers my entire career, and I'm excited and really happy to be with all of you today. Jason.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, excuse me, Jason Copeland. I'm a success manager here at HelpShift. Unlike Tim, I've only been in this role for about a year. But before this, I was at Blizzard Entertainment for 16 years, where I was a manager in the call center. So I'm quite familiar with service in the gaming industry, and that's been an invaluable, skill set and experience that I've been able to take and use for a lot of my own customers. I handle a lot of our mid-market customers who are often being introduced or exploring automation for the first time. So I do have a lot of experience now helping people understand the value and the benefits, and something I do pretty frequently. And I'm just glad to have an opportunity to share it, because I think we have some really good strategies that would be helpful.
Excellent. Thanks, Jason. So again, I think we all know why we're all here today, but, trying to go through it more formally. We know what the current economic and business landscape looks like right now, right? It's affecting all of our organizations, and we try to figure out what can we do about it. It's in the news, it's pervasive, it's online, and it's all the common reasons we've heard: rising inflation, rising interest rates, right? Supply chain issues, market declines. And you probably hear it, depending on what space or industry you're in. It's impacting, I think, everybody, but mostly in tech. And recently, Crunchbase published an article, probably just a few weeks ago, stating that more than 38,000 layoffs in tech in the U.S. so far this year, and also that many of the companies that were listed in that article laid off more than 30% of their workforce. So it's concerning, right? It's concerning for all of us. So hopefully, this gives you some strategies or things to think about from a support perspective, and how you work with your end users or your customers. But really, as a result, we're all reviewing budgets, we're reviewing our spending. There's definitely cost cutting. It's an effort to shore up financials. And then you're asking, potentially those questions: how do we avoid reducing staff? It's not something that anybody wants to do. It's really a difficult situation. So with that brings really a greater scrutiny on technology and platform spend, and the cost of churn for support, right? That's also an important one. The customer experience, it extends all the way through to support. Really, support is an extension of your brand, and the cost of, or the result of, poor support means that you could lose a customer, right? Or a player if you're in the gaming space. They won't come back, they'll go somewhere else. It's almost like, if you think about real estate, it was a seller's market. It's kind of like it's a customer market. So how do we, help with that? Then if you think about it from support costs, right? There's an average support cost of dealing with, the cost that your company or your support team is really paying for an agent to handle or respond to a phone call, an email, a ticket as it comes in. We've seen on average, it could be $3, it could be $5, it could be higher depending on, the type of agents or staff that you're using. But, before we get to that, I think that's the current landscape. And if we go to the next slide, we can talk about, just some of the benefits of it. And then after that, we'll get into the solution. But, you'll see on the next slide that there's an 88% number. This is platform-wide usage of automation or bots on HelpShift, right? This is really the average volume of automation that we see from all of the brands on our platform. And I can't emphasize this enough, 88%, that's a really big number. That means that of all the issues submitted to HelpShift from our customers, either 65% was fully automated, where no agent was required to resolve an issue. 23% partially automated, where a bot and agent work together. And then, obviously the difference of that is 12% which went straight to an agent. So you can see there's significant cost savings automatically. And it's not just really cost savings, and we'll get into that a bit more as well as we go through the presentation and kind of the content. But, it's not just cost savings, but it definitely helps when you think about it. The middle box is more about the return, or for every dollar spent on automation, brands on our platform have generated in a range of 1.5 times to 10 times return on that investment. Automation scales as you use it. So the more automation that's applied, the more value it can bring to you. But it's not just the value of, from a cost perspective, it's also from an agent perspective. It's also from your customer's perspective. So when you leverage automation, right, we see on average 4.3 CSAT when an agent and a bot work together. Now, again, this is kind of platform wide. The actual results will vary, but depending on your service model, your service level. But when you do provide that immediate response through automation, it's when your customer is raising his or her hand to saying, hey, I need some help. I'm looking for information. I'm having a problem. And within messaging, when it's asynchronous or even email with long response times, you can greatly improve that experience automatically through bots. You're reducing that response time, that handle time, that resolution time. You're getting at least that information that can number one, be responsive to your customers. And then number two, when an agent gets that information, it's compressing that handle time or that resolution time so that it's really doing two things and driving up that CSAT. And again, as I mentioned, depending on your service level, we've even seen upwards of 4.8 to 4.9 from a CSAT perspective on a scale of 1 to 5. There are definitely benefits and value in automation. So I hope that, that helps paint that kind of overarching picture. And then we'll get into kind of some of what we're recommending. So if you move on to the next slide, Jason, we'll talk about, and especially for some of you that are already customers, you've heard us say this, hopefully, it's the modern support journey. It's keeping, users within the environment or the channel, ensuring retention throughout the entire customer service process. And if you look at the chart from left to right, essentially on the left side, it's the solutions, it's, the person holding their device, meaning, hey, they're looking for help, in some way, some form, whether that's going online to your help center or looking at FAQ content, and that could be it, right? And they find their answer and they go and they don't submit an issue. But for every time they submit an issue, that's a cost, right? That's a cost now to support. And then the flow from left to right, if you look at the numbers of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, that's really where we have features and functionality within our platform to solve for each of those 5 things. Smart Intents is our AI solution, a classification. You get into an intent, it gets, basically your top issues. It'll provide a workflow or solution faster, ultimately faster resolution. Hopefully faster resolution means higher CSAT and a better experience. Recommendations with respect to Quick Search Bot. That's just more of a kind of what I like to call it is like the last line of defense, meaning the last attempt to deflect, and maybe they can find what they're looking for based on some, NLP that we do to parse, the questions or the problems that they're having to say, hey, potentially this is some information that might help you. And if it does, it's a deflection tool and it doesn't become an issue again for agents to respond. And then lastly, if it does make it all the way through as an issue, then, we have the automation strategy in place in step 4. The 5 is, the agent experience within the dashboard, and then the resolution. But underlying all that is the kind of the bottom where you see feedback. We have, 2 tools. It's a standard feedback, which is just once the issue is resolved, it's just how do you rate us 1 to 5? But then we also have what we call feedback bots, which is more of a, curated or customizable way of capturing feedback. And that could be, helping to parse, the agent experience from the overall experience or CSAT with the brand or your company. And if you get a slower score, you can follow up with some quick questions of just trying to understand why they gave you a 1 to a 2 or a 3 versus a 4 or a 5. But what we'll focus on today is what you see highlighted in steps 2 and 4. And with that, I'll hand it over to Jason.
Yeah, so steps 2 and 4 in particular, simply because what we're going to be focusing on is how to learn everything about your current customer base and what kinds of problems that they're having, being able to capture all of that information, then figuring out how can we utilize that data to now start delivering service in an automated way, in the most efficient manner possible, while also prioritizing some of our most important issues. So I'll begin with capturing your data. This, in my experience, seems to be the most intimidating when people encounter it for the first time. And it does require some thought and planning, but ultimately, like, the foundation that you build for your data is going to be incredibly powerful. And it's, once you set it up, you don't have to do a whole lot of tweaking to it unless you want to learn something new. But we have custom issue fields. It's what we call this particular feature. It allows your engineers to take back-end customer data that you have internally, and then attaching that to every issue that's created, so that when the issue is created, it'll bring in all of the customized data that you want your agents or your bots to be able to utilize. Most importantly, though, these are the bread and butter of the automations, because you're actually able to trigger specific automations depending on what are in these custom issue fields. So as you can imagine, maybe you're already thinking about how creative you can get with that. And all these data types are customizable. We have different things like yes or no answer, checkbox, text, date, numbers, and lists of options. Those are really cool because you can create a drop-down menu of options, such as, say, issue types or categories, and that can be its own object that you can then use in automations. So that's user segmentation. You might want to know things about your customer, like how long have they been a customer? Are they a VIP? Do they have a really high spend? What level are they on when they encounter this bug, or whatever data you could possibly think of. If you have it, you can attach it to a HelpShift issue. So then issue segmentation, we're kind of departing from users and now thinking about the problems themselves. And our solution for that is Smart Intents. You're able to build these unique and reusable menus that will be a series of categories that will then expand into several subcategories beneath that. And users, when they go through, they actually pick and go through this menu and they tell you what their problem is. They categorize their own issue. Or if they can't really find it in the menu, maybe they type in a message and our AI will suggest an intent for them and they can let that help instead. But yeah, so once a user selects something from a Smart Intent, you would have automations that are built to say, hey, when someone selects this intent, we're going to send it to this workflow or this queue or this agent or whatever you decide the journey for that problem is going to be. So in terms of the customer journey and some of the decisions you might make when segmenting users and issues, a very simple example here, this little quadrant kind of separating non-VIP users and VIP users, and then common issues and complex issues. And so, a model might be that you want VIPs to never touch a bot. You only want them to talk to agents. But if it's easy, maybe we can give them our level 1 agents. But if it's a really complicated issue, maybe we send it to a level 2 agent that has a little bit more training and experience, so on and so forth. For non-VIPs, maybe we want all common issues to be automatically resolved by a bot. That's very common, actually, and what's driving the statistics that Tim shared on the previous slides about how much is being automated platform-wide. And then, of course, if it's a complex issue, maybe we just ask some questions, or maybe it's an issue that does require an agent to actually, execute the solution on. Maybe they have to do something on the back end or send a report or what have you. But oftentimes you need a lot of information from your customer before you can even begin to solve that. And bots can actually do all of that triaging and collection for you. So by the time the agent gets it, they're going to have everything they need to proceed with the solution. So going into a little bit more about the data side of things. So now that we've set up our custom issue fields, we have our Smart Intents, and we're ready to go. We're ready to start learning about our customers. We need a way to organize this information so that it's actually usable and consumable, right? And the way we would do that is through tags. I mean, this gives you total visibility into literally anything you could ever want insight on. They're fully customizable, and you use whichever ones that you think might benefit you. There's a list here, just some examples. This is from an internal dashboard, but things like custom bots, maybe you want to track, integrations that are occurring, how many were resolved by automations, how many were on web chat, FAQs, etc. I've even seen examples of people, some of my customers, labeling issues following a product launch or an update to specifically capture like the first 3 days of reports. And it's easy for them to go and capture all of it and see all of it because it's going to have a label that's unique to those issues. And so that's where the power of tags comes into play, is that when you can now organize and properly label everything that you have in your queue so that you can see what's really going on from a bird's eye view. And last but not least, regarding tags, I highly recommend that you automate these as much as possible. It is totally okay to have agents correct tags if they're inaccurate. That's obviously fine. It's a little bit difficult to expect agents to always apply tag to every issue. You do get some, variation in accuracy and whatnot. So I do recommend that you try to automate tags as much as possible. So queues. Been trying to figure out the best way to explain queues. It's really just a home for every issue, right? But there's so much more than that, right? So every issue that a customer submits, it's going to go through your automations and categorizations and tagging and whatnot. But now it needs to sit somewhere and wait for an agent. Either after it comes out of a bot workflow, or if it's a VIP, it goes straight to the queue. What this is that you create these and customize them, and then you order them in order of importance. And when you combine this with auto assign, which is a very, very important feature, the agents are going to be getting only the issues that are the most important for that agent to work on at that time. And whatever the most important issue is determined by you. So ideally, what you have set up is the system to where all of your agents are always going to have the work that is most important in that given moment. So if there's a VIP or somebody waiting too long, or I can't pay for something, or I paid for something and didn't get it, some really urgent issues that you might want to get to quickly, you can trust that all of your agents are going to be getting those sooner than maybe something that could wait a couple of days, such as a suggestion or feedback or a minor request. And actually, we have seen about 30% improvement to time to first response just after enabling auto assignment. So it is a very, very powerful tool.
Yeah, I'll give a little more color on that real quick, Jason. So that 30% number, I can recall 2 customers of mine. One was a large big box retailer here in the States, hundreds of agents, and they did not have auto assignment. Their response time was days. And they implemented, said, hey, let's try it out. And they implemented auto assignment, and it immediately they saw I think it was like a 31% reduction in the response time. And they loved it. And they couldn't believe it, like why didn't we do this sooner? And then the other one is, more of a specialized kind of chat service that it was like medical chats, members paid for a service. So they weren't trying to deflect. They weren't trying to give information. They wanted their members or their customers to write in. Like they wanted them to talk to these medical professionals. And they had a really high service model. I think their goal was right around a minute from a first response time. And they were just over, I think it was like a minute, 40 seconds. And, at first they were like, nope, we're gonna review each one and triage it and assign them. And they realized quickly, even after we had previously recommended it, like, okay, what happens when volume spikes? What happens if there's a surge? What happens if there's growth? And finally, they're like, look, they realized there was a certain period of time of day that they noticed volume would go up. And that was probably in the afternoon. So, if you think of it from people are off work, they start to pay attention more to their personal stuff. And they started to get more inbounds. And so they're like, okay, well, would you consider auto assignment? And, they were a little bit worried about it because they were like, well, it's going straight to this medical professional, and the response time was already short, but they did it and they saw 30% immediately. So, automation, isn't just bots, it's also just auto assignment too. It's like getting it to the right person based on what you know in the data and their status as far as what you know about them. as a person or an individual. So there's definite benefit there to auto assignment. I just wanted to share those two examples.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, because it really is like when you think about all of the information that you're going to suddenly start collecting, and then you're going to begin organizing it, and you get an idea for what kinds of problems are going to be the most important. And then you can start routing them to the agents automatically. It really starts to unfold just this, nonstop day-to-day process that you don't have to manage manually, that is actually incredibly time consuming and challenging to manage manually. And the benefits, like, really just allow you to focus on the customers that really do need a human touch, right? Those problems that do require some investigation and thought behind it. And so with that, now that we have all of this that we've just been talking about, we're going to start harnessing that data and actually, automating some issues. So we'll start with fully automated workflows. I know this one tends to be the most my customers are generally more hesitant about this because I think it has a bad reputation, but I think it's best used under certain circumstances. And they really can genuinely be helpful. I mean, customers would probably rather get their simple answer in a matter of minutes instead of waiting, 6 hours to get the same simple answer. I think in those cases, they're generally very popular. But this means that a custom bot resolves it from start to finish, no agent involvement whatsoever. So you can actually review your issue data and identify great opportunities for automation. Some of those might just include simple or routine tasks. Any problem where the solution is simply sharing information, like here's your answer, those are good candidates for it as well. But if we really want to get creative and start really driving some power behind your automations, we have APIs, and our custom bots can actually communicate with your backend systems using these APIs. But we'll get a little bit more into that later. That's a really exciting aspect of it. Partial automation is probably the most popular for a number of reasons. I've seen in previous slides, the CSAT is just incredibly higher overall, at least in our experience in our platform. People who are using partially automated workflows, those are the ones that score the highest consistently. Because it's a combination of bots and agents working together, something that would have taken an agent much longer to respond to, and perhaps even engage in a back and forth over a couple of days to gather all the required and necessary details. You can have a bot do it instantly. When you think about what is the user doing when they submit that issue, they're filing their issue, they're asking, answering their intent. This is what my problem is, and then they're going to be assigned to a bot immediately and be asked those questions right there before they leave the device, right? And so that's sort of the important piece of it, is that you capture all of that additional context right away. And then by the time your agent is finally able to get to it, it has everything they need to proceed with the solution. So I think I covered all the examples pretty much, but yeah, obtain more details about the problem is a good way to use it. Maybe getting attachments like screenshots and videos. Maybe even like some account verification details if you need to ask a secret question answer, or just anything to make sure you're talking to the right customer. That can also be done and taken care of for the agent as well. This is the most important part at the end for me. Nobody's first attempt at an automation strategy is really going to be perfect the first time. You are going to see some immediate improvements, especially around time to first response. But it doesn't always go as you expected, because you are trying to do a little bit of guesswork based on your analysis of your data. And some of it's going to be right. Maybe some of it didn't quite hit as well as you were expecting. So that's why it's really important to just fine tune automation. It's sort of a never ending cycle. Once in a while, just checking on the health of your automations. How much do your customers like it? Are they actually helping them? And we have a number of different reports to help you look at this from several different angles. So, just as an example, you can see what your bot CSAT is. If they're fully resolving issues, they get a survey. And that gives you the opportunity to see how well that bot is performing. And if it's performing badly, is there a good reason why, or is it something that we can fix? Is it just the nature of the problem, or do we need to change the messaging up a bit? But all kinds of stuff, right? So you should ask yourself questions like this when you're looking through your data. Be curious about why things are maybe not going as you expected, by saying why does this bot escalate to an agent more often than we expected? Or why is my partial automation not resolving time to resolve as expected, or improving time to resolve as expected? And do my agents have feedback? I mean, they're interacting with your customers every day, and they see the interactions that they have with the bots because the chat is all there. And so they would definitely have feedback on how helpful those bots are to them, and perhaps even they may be able to tell you what they wish the bot could do in addition to what they already are. So it's a really good opportunity to get some good advice. So now we're going to go to my favorite part, which is the advanced automations, custom bot APIs, right? So, truth be told, I'm not an engineer, so I'm not an expert on how the engineers are going to create these endpoints at your site. But essentially, if you can build the endpoints and you have your engineers that have decided that they're going to create these services or allow these types of information sharing between your system and HelpShift, it's really amazing kind of some of the stuff that you can create. I mean, we've seen customers automate refunds where it checks the order's eligibility and will return. And if it's not eligible, it'll inform the customer. If it's eligible, then you can actually send a request to trigger that backend system that processes the refund. And that can all be done within a bot conversation without agent involvement. I'm going to show you an example here. Play a quick little video just as a preface to this. This example is a service that the customer needs that requires them to verify their account details just to make sure that they're proceeding with the correct customer. Let me switch over to that real quick. So this is a web chat. We opened up a web chat and the user is going to tell us what they want to do. And in this example, they want to see what their data is. They're putting in a GDPR request and they would like a copy of all the personal data that the company has. So they're recommended an intent to obtain copy of my data just based off what they typed. And the bot's now going to tell them, hey, we just need to verify a few details. We'll answer those and then we'll be able to move forward. The bot says that you're currently logged into this email address. Is this correct? Yes. Great. Now we just need to make sure that we're talking to the correct person. So I'm going to ask you some security questions. When is your date of birth? So the user says August 30th, 1990. But in this case, it looks like there was a typo. The bot was able to detect that it's not accurate. The user then corrects it to the 30th, which is his actual birthday. And that's correct. So now they can proceed with the next step. The next is they're going to ask them a secret question answer. In this case, it was, what is your mother's maiden name? And the bot is going to send their response and send it to the backend system and check and verify if it matches what you have on file. And that's it. And then it can submit a trigger to say, hey, proceed with the processing of this GDPR request. It could be as simple as it creates a JIRA ticket for somebody that with special access to do that can now process it, or perhaps you already have some automated systems that will take care of it all for you. Either way, that can be connected to this HelpShift bot.
So Jason, this is a very relevant topic, GDPR. In your past experience, handling these requests in the past, how long would it take? Like, what would that look like? Because this was fully automated. We're using APIs to make calls and validate information. Mm-hmm. The agent doesn't have to do it. And you're essentially getting a lot of time back, right? And also improving the conversation experience.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it really depends too. So if you're getting a lot of data requests, whether it's account deletions or corrections, obtaining copies, I know that it's a fairly common and popular thing to do, especially in the gaming industry. And if you're having to do it one at a time, it is quite a lengthy verification process. They're going to have to be handled in the order that they're received. And then on top of that, the actual processing of that data and sending a copy does take a long time in and of itself. So anything that we can do to speed that process up and get that that time started would be beneficial. I don't recall exact figures, but of course it's going to depend on, your average volume and kind of the size of your staff currently. So the actual times may vary doing it manually. But I know that it's very popular to find ways to be able to automate that whole process. Because in reality, it doesn't require an agent. It's just customers wanting to grab their own personal data for their own reasons, right? We don't necessarily need to have an agent question them over anything as long as we're confident that we're talking to the right person. So of course the bot is built to, if they're continuing to answer wrong or they can't answer the questions to verify, then of course they can be routed to an agent where they can continue the conversation.
Yeah, I imagine this applies to obviously other verticals or industries, fintech, with whether it's a transfer request that was made or, sending out a new or replacement card. Maybe obviously the retail example is really easy. That one's always, where's my order? Or I want a refund or something. So Yeah, that's definitely powerful. Thanks.
Yep, thank you. So now we're going to see it in action. I would like to just briefly walk through and then show you a quick video of how bots are actually built. I think when people start thinking automation, they think that they're going to need engineers or data scientists to come in and start building these tools for you, for your support team to use, and that's simply not the case. They may be required for things like custom bot APIs or some more advanced things like custom issue fields, but building bots actually does not require any engineering resources whatsoever. The admins can do this. So a retail bot example, just to walk you through quickly, what you might do or what this example company might do to build this refund bot. So the first step, it's going to ask the user for some information, like what exactly are you here for? What would you like to do? And the bot's going to present these 3 options to the customer in the chat, and then they can make their selections. So in this case, we have, can I check and return, or check if I can return an item, and then the second option being trade for another item. So if they select the first one, it's going to route to this little box that says return branch. And what this is going to do is it's going to check a custom issue field called order and verify whether or not this request is actually eligible for return. And then the bottom one, if they say trade for another item, that is instead going to end this particular workflow and then assign it to another bot that was built specifically for trading items. Now, the third step is if we go back to the order is approved, it's going to go through, it's going to validate the date. It asks the user for a date type response so that it can verify that it's got the correct order. And if they were not eligible for a refund, which is the no match right here, it's going to go down to saying, hey, it just sends a message saying, I'm sorry, but this is not available for a return. And then finally, last but not least, the user who was eligible goes through this pathway, they enter their date and it's accurate. And then the API request is triggered and it will actually go through and submit the order on the back end. And in this example, the company has services that were built for refunds. So I'm going to show you a quick video. It's about 4 minutes, and I'll just kind of talk through it, but that way you get to see what it looks like to build a bot. And I'm hoping that this is less intimidating once you actually get to see how easy it is. All right, so this is a bug report bot. I wanted to, in this example, to create a bot that would automate collecting bug reports from customers in a very efficient and useful way. So the first step is we're gonna have the user select a bug type. We want them to categorize it, right? So we're gonna say get information from user. That's the type of step that we have. And what we're gonna do is get a single input from this user. We want it to be text, or no, sorry, we want it to be a list of options. I've pre-created a custom issue field that is a list of options, and I select that here. And then in that drop-down menu, I can see a list of my custom issue fields. I select the bug type, and there's all the categories. Then if you notice, all the categories are there, and you can actually click the plus sign on it and attach a new step to that selection. And for this step, we're actually going to just have them explain in their own words in detail what exactly happened. We want to get that experience from the user. So this one is going to be text because we just want them to type freely. Then we're going to add a new step after they type out their text and they hit enter. Then it's going to move on to the next step. Now we're going to get some specific information. I'm sure that in the gaming community, we all know that you don't often get all the details you need to investigate a bug. In a majority of your reports, they're typically focused on the impact that it had to them and maybe some reimbursement they're expecting. But it would be nice to know certain things. So what we're going to do here is create a form that we're going to create some custom fields for. And then the user is going to fill out this form and the agent's going to have all of that. So we ask here, when did this happen, right? That's usually important. If it's a bug report from 3 weeks ago, that may not be found right away if we're not aware of how long ago it was. And then how often does this happen? Was it a one-off report, or does it happen every day or every time you do a specific thing? So that's an important data point that they might leave out. And then, of course, what were you doing when it happened? That makes it so much easier if you have any sort of like backend logs or reporting to help you locate, what had occurred during these events. This could be a really helpful question to have answered. So this now shows you the 3 form fields that they're going to have. And once they fill it out and submit it, it's going to move on to the next step. We're going to do one last get information from the user. If they happen to have any screenshots or videos, those can be incredibly helpful to locating the cause of a bug. So we're going to go ahead and give them a chance to reply with an attachment. So you change the user reply format to attachment, and that will be the only thing that they can do during that step. Now, they may not always have attachments, so we're actually going to allow users to skip this step, which is totally okay. So now if the user attaches a video or a screenshot, it's going to move on to the next step where we're finally going to end the conversation flow, and then we're going to route it to an agent, okay? What I'm also going to do is, since we're sending it to a queue at the end, I want to give the customer an approximate wait time for how long that might be. So we're going to use the placeholder for the estimated wait time, which is going to be determined by the queue that it's currently sitting in. So the final action that we take on it is we're going to assign it to a queue. And then we select bug reports as the queue, which is something we pre-created before the demo. And there you have it. That is the entire singular branch. You can also link these steps to existing steps that you've already built. So if the user skips the attachment, we want that to still also go to route to agent. And there you have it. That was the entire demo. I'm going to switch back over to the presentation. All right. Questions? I do see we did have some questions.
Great. We got one, Jason. It's on the auto assignment. Is there a way to change priorities depending on the volume in a particular queue?
I see what you mean. So you're talking about like weighting the queue. So like maybe it doesn't automatically take from the top queue if there's only like 1 or 2 issues in it, but some priority 2 and 3 issues are waiting longer and might be prioritized more. Fortunately, not right now, but it just goes in order of like most important to least important. But that is actually a feature request that we have had brought up in the past. So it's definitely something that's on our radar.
But you can change the priority of your queues. So if you do see that the volume is spiking in a particular queue, you can make that priority level, let's say 1. There's also another way. We have real-time operations, which you can then monitor, backlogs, queue performance across all of your queues. And if you do see, and you can set alerts, visual alerts on your screen that says, hey, if it reaches a certain threshold of, let's say, backlog, it reaches a certain threshold of, let's say, response time, then it'll call that to your attention, and you can then make some changes, whether it's upping the capacity from an auto assignment perspective, or even just changing then the priority queue. So we do have ways to achieve that desired goal, which is changing priorities. So hopefully that answers your question. The second question is on the tag automations. Is there a way to automatically tag depending on the customer's message, aside from using smart intents? So dependent upon the message content.
In fact, yes, there is specifically an option in the automation to search for keywords. So you could have, contents of the message trigger specific tags. There's actually a very large variety of different data points that you can use to assign tags with. So anywhere from like custom issue fields to platform, language, keyword, intent that they selected. I mean, you name it. There's a lot of opportunity to automate the tagging in that case. But yeah.
Great.
I saw there was a question about the experience on SDKX, but it looked like that got answered. Okay, cool. Yeah. Any other questions? Feel free to fire them off. You can do it in the main chat here or in the Q&A section. It's either one's fine with us.
Here's one, Jason. It's about language support. So, the strategy for automation, does that apply to English only, or, how does it work for other languages?
Yeah, well, okay, yeah. So language support, there's a number of different ways that can be approached. The most common way would likely be the use of text templates. So within these bot workflows, you thankfully do not have to create a new bot for every single language. That used to be true at HelpShift some years ago, but with text templates, what you can do is create the message in a text template and then localize in all the languages that you're currently supporting. So, English, Spanish, Chinese, French, whatever, you name it. And now all of those translations are associated with that text template. And then instead of typing a message in the bot building phase, you would actually just attach the text template. So it'll be automatic. The user will come in, HelpShift will automatically detect, the language that the customer is going to need to be communicating in, and it'll send the translated message for that language. And so that is also another layer of automation to where you don't have to really worry about managing the different languages and ensuring they get to the right type of service.
Great. We got another question. Typically, how long does it take to, roll out or with a bot strategy or automation strategy?
Well, I've seen some as quick as under, 5 days. And I've seen some take a few weeks just because of the scale and scope of which we're trying to automate. So it really does depend on how long, but a basic, category-based automation strategy with some, simple issues being fully automated, a lot of issues being triaged and a lot of data gathering going on, that can actually be a pretty fast rollout. Where it really starts to get longer is when you want to get really creative and do some more advanced things, and then it can slow down if you require engineering resources. So there's just natural delays that it can occur, I think, at any company. But if it's just the admins and they're going to just build this automation strategy, it's actually quite quick. The longest part is the planning and just making all the decisions that you need to make about what you want to automate. The actual building process after that is usually in a day.
Great. So it sounds like it really depends, right? I mean, that's the answer. It depends on the strategy, depends on, what you're focused on. And I think also a lot of times, we recommend some customers that maybe are starting to dip their toe in the water with it is, I like to always say, start small. Maybe get comfortable with it first, apply it to maybe 1 or 2 issue types, see how it works. Because really, once you do that as a customer, you learn, like, okay, it's really flexible in terms of how you apply it. And then it gives you more ideas of how I can apply it to our current workflow, right? How we handle certain issue types. And once that happens, like, the ideas start running, and then you can expand it and scale it. So I always say, don't boil the ocean, start small, kind of nail it before you scale it type of mentality. And so, again, it can be as fast and quick or as long and drawn out as you need it to be, depending on, the goals and the structure of that strategy. Like one in the chat, any plans to simplify bot construction, like a copy step option? I believe, yes, our product team is always looking at improving not just the functionality, but then also the management or the change management aspect of it within the dashboard. So I want to say, yes, there are ways of trying to, improve that experience. So hopefully, Albert, that helps answer your question.
Well, we do actually have some pretty cool enhancements that will simplify bot construction significantly. That's not quite copy step, but the ability to do rich branching. So instead of needing to use automations to fill up all these custom issue fields for then your bots to then go ahead and automate off of, instead, when we launch this feature, ideally it would be that the bots can do all the checking that the automations did instead, and then just keep all of that workflow contained within the bot itself. So I think that's going to be a big help and really simplify some of the webs that can get created as you scale automation strategies. I'm really excited about that one.
Great. Let's see. Doesn't look like any other questions. I think we can go ahead and wrap. Really, again, just wanted to say thank you all for your time today. I know, some of you are joining towards the end of your day or evening, and thanks again for making the time. I trust this was helpful, insightful to leverage an automation strategy to scale your support operations, especially in some uncertain times. And as you can see, it really does work based on your goals, right? If you're looking to maintain your current costs, improve your experience, it can do that. If you're looking to curb some spending or headcount, and not have to incur new staffing costs, it can be applied in that way. And especially if you're in a growth phase or you're launching a new game, a new app, maybe a new line of business or service, and you need to accommodate for that increase in volume, it really does help with balancing out the need to maybe add additional headcount, which can be costly, and leverage some automation to kind of leverage your own team or your current team or headcount to do that. So really, it can help in all capacities, making your experience the best it can be for your customers as well as yourselves by making your agents more efficient and productive. For current customers, if you have any questions, please just reach out to your CSM or your account manager. We're happy to discuss further ideas, options to just how to build it out, how to even just start thinking about it. And then if you're not yet a customer of HelpShift, we definitely have some tools online that you can use, and you can sign up. It's just really at our domain, helpshift.com, experience-helpshift. So really, again, Jason, thank you so much. On behalf of Jason, we really do appreciate your time, and hopefully you found this beneficial. And we hope to see you again on our next future webinars. Thank you.